At the just concluded G7 summit, there were many meetings world leaders had with each other in the Apulia region of Italy. But the most eye-catching among them have been interactions between Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and French President Emmanuel Macron. And with good reason. While the Italian Prime Minister was hugely effusive and warmly expressive in greeting other leaders. However, she was seen giving what can be described as cold stare to Macron as they shook hands. The two leaders also had a face-off on the sidelines of the summit over how to frame abortion rights in the final G7 summit. According to Italian media, Meloni objected to the use of the phrase safe and legal abortion in the final statement, calling it a profoundly wrong. Now, the French president told reporters that he regretted the word was removed. Macron said France has a vision of equality between men and women and argued that not all countries share that vision. Meloni in turn accused the French president of using the G7 summit to boost election prospects. Eventually, Meloni prevailed over Macron and the decision was taken to maintain the previous G7 summit's wording on the abortion rights. The seemingly frosty relationship between Macron and Meloni comes in the backdrop of the results of the recent European election. The Meloni's far-right party gained significantly in Italy, while Macron lost the majority to Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party in France. The RM won a landslide victory with over 30% votes. Macron's Renaissance Party secured around 23%. It sent France into political chaos with Macron announcing a snap election, which is due on June 30th and July 7th. And for more on this, we are being joined by our correspondent Valentina Di Donato, live from Puglia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you, what are the big takeaways, meaning where all could the G7 come to a consensus and or could it not?
Well, I would say that the big win for the G7 was the $50 billion for Ukraine. It is a clear sign that there is a united front on how the G7 leaders want to move forward and handle this war. They said in a communique that Russia must end the illegal war of aggression and that destroying infrastructure and lives is unacceptable. So the $50 billion towards reconstructing and the end of this war, and even towards the military to continue the fight, is a clear sign of where the G7 leaders stand right now. Obviously, for many reasons, in the EU, there is a division, as you mentioned earlier, between Macron and Meloni, two very different political moments, but in terms of this war, they did come together.
Right. Now, you talked about the $50 billion. Now, this is not the first time that U.S. has been giving these packages. It has been doing this for quite some time now. But how do you think that is influencing on the ground? Is there any kind of solution to, they have a consensus, yes, we want to end the war, but is it getting any impact? Do we see any impact?
Well, that's what we have to now see, how and when. How are these funds going to be distributed and when? The timing is still being worked out, but we know that they want to inject that money into reconstruction, which will be a long term, but as well short term in the immediate to continue the fight, so towards the military. And that just goes to show how important this moment is for Ukraine. Zelensky's presence was vital, and perhaps it's another way for him to enter NATO. This might be another small sign for it to happen.
Right. Now, this is something different I want to pick up on. So we know that migration has also been another topic which leaders took up. We see that there has been a frosty relationship or kind of a meeting with Macron and Meloni. How is the Italian media looking at it in terms of migration? What kind of resolution do you think came out of these meetings?
Well, migration was a big topic on this G7. Obviously, Italy is one of the first countries in the EU where the migrants arrive. And the thinking behind the G7 meeting was, how can we help invest in these countries where the migrants are coming from, where they're fleeing, if we can invest in infrastructure, in bettering their lives there, maybe they don't need to leave. And so that also comes out into in food and climate, so that people don't have to leave their home countries. Obviously, then when they arrive to the EU, where Macron and Meloni, then they stand in very different scenarios there.
Right. Thank you, Valentina, for joining us. We, of course, will see what we get out of this meeting later.
Thank you.